Hello, welcome to our first episode of the Solaris Project, a new podcast launched by a local Austin student organization called Solaris ATX. We're committed to increasing awareness about sustainability and careers in the sustainability industry for young people across our great city. And today we'll be interviewing one of the leading sustainability leaders of our city. My name is Max Davella, and I'm the executive director at Solaris ATX, and our team will now introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Audrey Huang, and I'm the director of marketing.
Hi, my name is Cody and I'm the Director of Technology.
Hi, I'm Srihari, and I'm the Director of Operations.
And now we're going to introduce our guest for today, Mr. Stan Pipkin.
Yeah, thanks, Max. My name is Stan Pipkin. I'm the CEO of Lighthouse Solar and design director at Architecture Solar Association, and have been in Austin in the renewable energy space for about 20 years, active with Solar Austin and a number of other organizations in Austin. Thanks for having me.
We're super happy to have you here today, Stan. So the first kind of area that we want to talk to you about is sort of your journey. Talk about your company, what it does, and how it has helped to improve the solar industry in Austin.
Well, yeah, I think my personal journey is probably somewhat integral to what Lighthouse Solar does, and does in a slightly different way than other solar EPCs. That's engineering, procurement, and construction. So that's kind of the umbrella term. Some people will say installer, but we're responsible for essentially deploying renewable systems in the distributed grid, oftentimes at buildings, at homes or businesses, sometimes standalone. Lighthouse Solar does it slightly differently, and I would say we've moved the bar. Where I got started in solar was kind of squarely a dissatisfaction with the architectural industry. I got a master's in architecture at UT, was practicing, and just was somewhat frustrated and maybe vexed by the lack of coordination between the architectural design process, workflow, education, and responsive adaptive energy systems. At that stage, still pretty early, but really have a strong promise to bring a much deeper level of integration of energy systems into the fabric of architecture. And so I got interested in that, and then had the opportunity to kind of be the ground floor of a business getting started in Austin, and really help grow the market, grow the business, which are kind of were symbiotic relationships at the time, and also grew a deep interest, curiosity, and I would say ongoing education with the technology, the industry, the market, policies. And so it's been kind of endlessly challenging and gratifying that we have some agency in how we can shape, or steer the industry itself within the context of an emerging technology and emerging markets. So I'd say we're still in that, not without its challenges, but still on that journey.
I'd love to hear it. Could you talk a little bit about when you kind of realized, oh, going into solar was like a really good idea, and kind of what steps you took after kind of coming to that realization to, become such a big leader in the industry?
Well, yeah, maybe overstated to say I'm a big leader, but I think I've been a student of architecture for a long time, which is really building systems, design systems, philosophies, thought processes, kind of histories. Like it's an endlessly rich kind of milieu, we'll say. And so solar, I didn't know anything about. I barely knew, how electricity worked. But as I started to, essentially I paid attention to every detail I could. And so there wasn't, at that time, there wasn't really a school. There were resources, but nothing available for me at the time. So I was running a business and learning, how things were, how things worked in a real way, and working directly with manufacturers that were also, building new technologies. So I would say curiosity was the first and probably still the most important pillar for how I could shape my educational strategy. At the time, YouTube was still a new thing. Like I think it was literally came out of the guy's garage, in the mid 2000s. And so I look back now, from where we sit today, there's an entire curriculum available on YouTube that's actually quite good. And so, the skills that I would have profited from then would really just be how to discern, what information in the public sphere is worthy and has integrity, and how to vet it and how to cross-check it. So I've learned that kind of in this context, and that it's an incredibly relevant resource, both for myself and for our teams, and the people involved in this industry. So I would say curiosity was the first and probably still the most important pillar for how I could shape my educational strategy. At the time, YouTube was still a new thing. Like I think it was literally came out of the guy's garage, in the mid 2000s. And so I look back now, from where we sit today, there's an entire curriculum available on YouTube that's actually quite good. And so, there's an entire that kind of ground up peer-to-peer knowledge share was actually quite vital. The the institutional resources at the time, I mean, I helped author some of those curricula for ACC, for example, talked to UT over the years, and a handful of, educators at AISD and other schools. It's really, I think that was a challenge because I felt like it was almost too early at the time to codify all the information and still have it be relevant because things were moving so quickly. So, I would say what intrigued me and kind of kept buoying me up towards, the next thing was just the self-educational requirement just to stay relevant. So there was, kind of an interesting tension between running a business, being competitive, being attractive, working directly with customers, and learning what the challenges were, and then learning how to address those through solutions. So that put a lot of pressure on us as a company to make sure, we're not over-representing what we know or could do, and representing well the technologies that we were instituting. So that was an ongoing process. It wasn't like I got certified and then, or got a master's in solar. It was really an attitude that I had to take towards ongoing education, ongoing curiosity, and it's played well. That hasn't stopped. I mean, I've now the resources available to anybody on demand are just, multiplied, um, and I think that's a amazing opportunity, for someone to enter the industry just to leverage what's available, to everybody equally. So, and this is I would say it's a very new condition as compared to when I got started. Just briefly, the other part of your question was, why did I think solar was a good idea at the time? I didn't, there's certainly a lot of risk involved. I mean, I had done quite well in the architectural setting and had considered myself a designer, which is part of the architectural profession. But the aiming for holistic solutions was somewhat hard to do. The business of architecture, like how you make a living doing that, is something that you know uh, takes different forms. And I think the relative access I had to, we'll say, solution engineering, or steering a conversation around energy through the solar industry was just much more. I felt I had more agency. I felt I had more a greater ability to have an impact on a individuals' lives and experiences, and then more individuals. Like I could leverage our efforts across a broader market. So that was my intuition. Not been that simple, but I still actually, it's one of the strongest principles that I abide my work by.
Definitely some great insight there. So I wanted to ask, say you were starting again, you just graduated from UT, and you were really trying to look at going into the solar industry. How do you think the I guess opportunities have really expanded in the solar industry, and how would you go about navigating entering the industry if you had to do it again in the present day?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that's become quite, it's a fact of the industry is that it's a mature industry. So at the time when somebody said solar, let's say this is the late, 2009 or so, if you said solar, you know, the general public immediately thought solar panel, and then thinks about somebody putting the panel on a roof. So a very limited view of what the industry actually is. But that was really what people imagined, and that's still relevant. So that still happens or around the world. Solar is a modular technology that is built on site. So there's no robots. There are some corners of the industry where robots are effective in the field, but by and large, the power of solar is that it's assembled at a site. So it's site specific, which generally means there's people involved. So that's absolutely still relevant. But the reality is solar is a complex and mature, multi-layered industry, just like you'd find other um, product-driven, technology-driven, finance-driven, design-driven industries. So I would probably reverse the challenge and say, tell me what someone's interested in, and I bet I could find a place in the solar industry where that would be relevant. I mean, your entire team, uh, you know, your your suite of directors, they would all fit in solar companies across the country, across the world. So, building organizations that are effective out in the market, that's one entire class. So these are mature businesses, so attracts the business minded folks. Messaging and marketing is an incredibly rich opportunity right now in this moment because it's so polarized, and there's a great need for that. Um, Design and engineering, I mean, it is from we'll say, creative solution-based design thinking and straight up engineering. There's room for that in companies like mine, manufacturers, product designers, and product companies. Those are ongoing needs. Finance has become an incredibly vital role. Like, how is solar deployed? What financial instruments and that's gotten more and more complex, I would say. So, that's just a subset, but I think the reality is it's a mature industry. And I would first ask the question, what is someone interested in doing? And then you could add to that, are they mission driven? Are they impact driven? And solar as an industry, our service, let's say broadly speaking to the world, provides that opportunity where it may be somewhat more remote for other types of products, other types of services. So yeah, I think people should be very honest with themselves. Say, this is how I want to deploy my efforts, my imagination, my curiosity, my strengths, and I want to apply it in a field that has the promise of making an impact, rather than, and this is something we often talk to people when they come to us and say, I want to save the world. It's like, hey, that's great. I applaud that, but how do you want to do that? And because we really want to make sure people are fulfilled. They have strengths, they have passions, they should apply those in a way that is absolutely fulfilling, because it's actually a hard industry. So it's not one you can't phone it in. It's hard work, it's changing, it's dynamic. And so people need to be connected with themselves to say, this is how I want to spend my time.
Gotcha. That's some great guidance, definitely, on how to, navigate going into the industry in today. And I know I've been asking a lot of questions, so I want to open this up to some of our lovely other directors on the call, see if they have anything they want to ask you.
So I guess you did talk a little bit about how you were dissatisfied with the architecture industry. Do you think like the educational resources around sustainability have like improved, and maybe now the architecture industry is becoming more environmentally aware and like has like a little bit more of a focus on sustainability? Or do you think that maybe colleges and universities need to integrate sustainability more into like curriculums or like a variety of different measures?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I think there's a couple parts there. I heard, does the architectural profession, has it integrated sustainability into its ethos and its working? And then do educational institutions support that? Or do they, prepare people for that? I would say and I went to UT in the late 90s, early 2000s, so it was a while ago. The sustainability program at the time was still pretty emergent, but it was a track, and they had excellent professors, excellent resources, that were, I would say, in the kind of top percentile across the world in terms of rigor and kind of principled pedagogical approaches. But it wasn't so much that the school was known for sustainability. The school was known for a certain type of kind of collaborative working, self-directed, self-learning, kind of forced, in some ways, forced environments to work with problems that are outside your abilities. And so the school set people up. I found it to be a really excellent education directly for the challenges that sustainability presents. Because you think sustainability is not, it's not in my opinion, it's not a certification that you earn and then sit on. It's really it's an approach to problems, approach to the world that relies on new inputs all the time. I mean, when you think about, I just picked up a book a couple like last week on natural capital, and it was an idea that was current in the late 90s, natural capitalism, but now there's science and studies that are looking at, ecologies around the world to understand, how do you account in a very strict sense, how do you account for the monetary value of these ecologies? It's a concept that was introduced then, but now it's gained a foothold and enough precision that you can fold it into, planning conversations and design conversations and keep certain corners of the capitalist world at bay. Like you can check their assumptions. So that's not something that existed then, but you have to be sort of prepared to constantly, I would say, fold in that new knowledge, those new ways of thinking into the activity that you're involved in. So architecture as a profession, it's challenging. I mean, you're now, uh, an architecture firm is providing a service for a client. In some cases, the firm may be directing or setting the principles of the problem, but ultimately in America, the way it's done, someone's paying for it, and we have, our regulatory space is not strong enough in America to dictate fully how things should be approached. Codes have gotten better. Definitely in Austin, they've gotten better. But ultimately, the client needs to be on board. So, the architect, one of the greatest roles they can play is educating, promoting, inspiring the clients out there that are, investing in the built world. They inspire them to do things, solve the triple bottom line and go for, impacts that solve many problems, not just sustainability, not just profitability, but there needs to be alignment of goals. And so the architect should be the shepherd, should be the um, curator of that conversation. And I'd say there are some standouts for sure. But the overall industry, that's where I was feeling less satisfied, is that the industry at the time wasn't supporting that role. It was elective, voluntary. You do it if you want to. But the reality is most buildings are not built with that in mind. So I moved into solar with the idea that if we're going to build stuff, which humans do, let's build it in a way that, inherently um, aligns those values. So people invest in solar because they want to save money. So they say. What I've found is most of our customers at the end of the day, they want to save the world. Like, I mean, it's that simple. They're excited, they're inspired. They just don't know how to express it at cocktail parties. They sound smarter if they say, my ROI is X, or I saved a lot of money. Aren't I smart? But I found that they get really excited when they imagine that they've done something that um, they have control over, yet it has broader community base and, global impact. So yeah, that's been hugely exciting, and that really hasn't changed. It feels like we've kind of unlocked more of that reserve capacity, we'll say.
Awesome. I wanted to kind of switch gears a bit. Where do you see like the solar industry going in the next upcoming years?
Well, yeah, I mean, probably 6 months ago would be a very different answer. I think what's happened now, and this is definitely a moment it's worth talking about, is the current administration has really, has targeted renewables in a way that's pretty unprecedented. And I would say it's out of step with the rest of the world. And not because solar is fashionable, it's because the rest of the world, countries, economies, are choosing an energy source that's deployable, it's less expensive, fewer emissions, and more controllable. And so the US right now is in retrograde motion, and that's a problem for us because we're in the US. It is a problem for parts of the world because we are, we have been considered a very strong market. So the manufacturing capacity that's around the world, part of it was counting on the US to play ball so that, that capacity could be fully utilized. Where I see solar going is up, deeper integration, more investment, and there's quite a bit of studies and just ongoing tracking. When you look at global investments around energy, it's moved to renewables. It's not a political, it's not a partisan conversation. It's just follow the money, and the majority of investment in new energy development is in renewables. So that's global. The U.S. has basically turned their back on it and said, we don't care. And I'm paraphrasing here, I'm being a little facetious, but the administration says we want to prop up oil and coal and for other reasons. And so, I think I'm bullish that solar and renewables, that's wind, solar, batteries. There's other technologies clearly, but um, the fundamental demand is unchanged, actually accelerating. And I'm where it goes, like your question, sort of where does solar goes? I mean, it's going to reorganize, I think, kind of global geopolitics. There's a good book. It's might check it out. Maybe it's worth a conversation on another podcast. But Ray Dalio, kind of looking at historical cycles, how empires rise and fall, and what are the signs, what are the metrics, and I think we're in a transition period right now where we'll see China as ascendant, and it's not just it's not the trade, it's not a one dimensional question, but from an energy perspective, they have outstripped us in patents, in investment, in capacity, access to resources, manufacturing ability, both capacity and precision, and technology. So that's a problem for the U.S., but it's where the world is going. So I, I think I, if I were to put a sort of crystal ball, we've got to sort of get through the next few years in the U.S., but if we don't turn it around, the U.S. will be left behind, and that's a problem. And we don't, I mean, we're not, our DNA is not to sit there. I mean, we're a country that's sort of driven to be competitive and be relevant, but this is a big one. Energy is what powers literally everything else. So, if we have fully moved into the information age, that's all electrons. Like electrons are now bits equals information equals, you know, economic and political capital. So, where does the energy come from is the question. Like, and we have to choose that, and we have to choose it wisely. So, yeah, I see solar as fundamental, but we've got to get through this kind of cloudy period.
Yeah, great insights. So, so I heard you mention about the Trump administration, how they had budget cuts going on. So how do you think do you think this, like, to what extent do you think this would affect the solar industry in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I would characterize it, they're not quite budget cuts. I mean, a lot of things have been clawbacks, policy changes. I mean, they've changed the law in some ways. And so, um, I, I think you could probably look at it from those two lenses. There are, um, budgeted, I would say, budgeted resources towards certain types of investment that have been abandoned. And then there's laws that are changing the face of the market and the interaction of the market in real ways. And so both are happening at the same time. So, you know, I'm less concerned about what's causing what, but we see disruption every day. And I think there will be, I mean, there's a company I read yesterday went out of business. It's Posigen. This is a company out of Louisiana. They will strand $600 million worth of investment. That's a big company. That's a big operation. It's a lot of capital that was designed to be deployed for low income, middle income residents. So that was their focus, residential, low to middle income, homeowners. So that has vanished overnight. They may come back in some form, but probably a very different business model, and it may take a while. So that kind of market, we'll say attrition or market consolidation or market restructuring is just happening right now. And it's, I think I would say for a long time, I didn't realize when someone said the market, is responding XYZ. What they really mean is the market is the sum of decisions made by individuals or companies. And so if you look at each company or at each individual, there's a decision being made based on, the realities of the world in the moment. So these are not abstract things. So the administration they canceled the Solar for All. So this is a program that was actually relevant in Austin. Ton of work has already been done to try to develop this program for the residents of Austin. So Austin Energy was going to utilize federal funds to deliver on, greater access to solar for its citizens, and that money was pulled back. And so, a total of $7 billion across the country was just pulled back, probably from I think over 60 awards that had been distributed through the IRA. So that was not just canceled, but the money was actually pulled back. So all those efforts are abandoned. And the impact it has on companies that were participating in that could be fatal. So those companies may not survive if they were planning on that, as part of their business model. So these are really unfortunate, disruptions. What I fear is that good people will go to other industries and not come back. Because if there's not business, if there's not a way to support people's engagement, it's really difficult to keep smart people, on board. And so that's a problem if you can't continue to educate and attract smart, capable people. The industry is not smart and capable. I mean, this is a very simple formula. And so, part of what, in my opinion, what a federal government can do well is ensure that, industries that we think are important, and there's many of them, um, should get the proper kind of respect and the proper level of investment that governments do well. Businesses don't tend to think in 50-year time horizons, but governments should. And so what we're seeing right now is a government that thinks in a time horizon that's shorter than what most businesses think. So I tend to think in a 5-year horizon, like where I can see, lay plans today and let them mature over time. But it seems like our government today is thinking in transactional, like, if it's not good today, then it's not good at all. And that's destructive. So, I'm talking to you guys, you're in high school. Y'all are clearly motivated and organized, and like uh, you've got a lot of composure, and the industry needs that, just that alone. So those are actual skills that I just listed. They may not be technical capabilities, but they're skills and you know uh, capacities that an industry like solar needs. And those don't grow overnight. So that's the most pessimistic view that I have, is that we'll lose time because of bad policy, but we'll lose more time because we haven't attracted people that can get started and get going right away.
Do you think that there's like anything that we as society can do to maybe like get more people motivated to pursue sustainability, even if there's, with the current policies in the US? Like, is there anything that we can do on a high school or a college level that might not deter people from going into these industries?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I mean, I don't have an easy answer. And I'm sure you're familiar with, there's the kind of the bumper stickers of, think globally, act locally. It imagines that kind of incremental change will add up to big moves. And I think that's always relevant. Um, but what I'm seeing right now is that, you know, we have parts of our society that it's not that they're not choosing sustainability, they don't even acknowledge that it's a part of our world. So when you one, it's good for you guys at this moment to like be really clear when you say the word sustainability, what do you really mean? Like in a philosophical level and a very concrete way. So when someone asks, or let's say that someone that may be a antagonistic or a denier or what have you, they ask, well, why sustainability? My thinking is, you don't need to convince anybody that gravity exists, right? I mean, everybody walks, they stumble and they fall down. Like gravity is a part of our world that we just accept as how we live. We're humans, we're on Earth. We understand gravity as a force, but we don't question it. And I think, sustainability doesn't have that stature yet. If you said, why do you conserve water? Like that should be as self-evident as gravity. It's if you have to convince somebody that water is actually a limited resource in terms of access to it and the quality of it and its importance for our cellular makeup and our life, that's an uphill battle. Like if you have to, so it's really my thinking is you don't have to take a militant attitude to say you need to crush, like hammer it onto in people's heads that this is the right thing to do. You have to act like it is it's vital to your existence. It's vital to your thriving. It's a part of the world. It makes sense. Like we don't question gravity, but we can we fly. Like so we understand how to manipulate gravity in ways that is more 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 sort of more liberating. It's like flight is not a gravity is not a restriction to flight. And so if we take that attitude towards sustainability, like what levels of creativity, innovation, new ways of living are actually available through this lens that we call sustainability. So for me, sustainability is not a moral imperative. I kind of fall in line because I mean, I save insects that crawl into my house. I put them outside. Like I just do that, but that doesn't mean I'm a better person. Um, I find that more interesting, and it has generated other types of values. But when we think about, what are the if we if we approach sustainability like it's a new way of living in the world, I would ask the question of you guys, like, what do you think is possible? What are those new ways of being in the world? The new things that we experience, the new joys, the new explorations. Um, like if we don't do, if we don't take that approach, what are we missing? And that's a way of thinking and then talking about it that supersedes politics and partisan polarizations and those are dangerous conversations that they really don't go anywhere if you're trying to convince each other of your rightness, in my opinion. But so I actually think, in a lot of ways, marketing, and and I'm not just saying to you, but the way that we storytell is oftentimes how we live. And I mean, I literally read yesterday that we are now talking like Chat GPT. So the large language models have trained based on largely people in Uganda and Kenya, checking, kind of training the model, and they use words that we in the US don't really use that much, but they're showing up through Chat GPT or through other AI models, and now we're talking like that. So that's crazy. I mean, to imagine that, we're not really in control of our stories. And I would say sustainability is in deep need of, a new level of storytelling that really it compels, it moves people. And that's not necessarily necessarily business models that can show up in many different ways. So I've had a number of conversations recently with some friends and colleagues, and I would encourage you guys as homework is to watch the I think it's a Paramount series, Landman. Have y'all heard of this? Have you? So it's kind of horrific and terrifying at the same time. It's about but it's kind of the mystique of the West, Manifest Destiny, and oil all wrapped up into one, and then it takes pot shots at renewable energy. So it's kind of an energy-based drama, but it's a story, and it tells the story in a certain way that um, paints renewables in a very negative way and paints oil and gas in a compelling way. And I'm not an apologist, but it's like hard to turn your eyes kind of thing. And so that's what we're up against in some ways. Like when you say sustainability is somebody turning their eyes, or rolling their eyes, we can't afford that anymore. I mean, we need to be talking about things that, inspire people to better ways of living, and that's an open question. It's not like we're going to be architects of what those ways of living are, but we have to be authors of, imagining it. So that's tall order. Maybe it's not a three-step action plan, but I feel like that's grossly missing right now, and we're getting outplayed basically by largely we'll say the fossil fuel, but it's a much larger regime of overconsumption and just kind of profligate development and you know heedless heedless concern for resources. And the alternative is not that we limit ourselves and hide in a corner. The alternative should be that we seek a greater level of abundance, and we have to define those terms. That is another thought, kind of school of thought called abundance. It's I think an attempt to do what I'm talking about, like kind of re-script the terms of our conversations. Probably worth looking at as well.
How do you think we can, so you're saying like we need more people wanting to go into solar. How do you think we can spread more awareness of solar energy to like people today, whether it's like younger people or people currently looking for jobs?
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you guys the question. Maybe this is just a quick redirect. Like, what have you found? I mean, you guys clearly are working together, and we met several months back. What have you found in your experience? Like your peers, are they aware of it? Are they deaf to it? Are they unconcerned? Are they not interested? Like, where are the barriers for you in your world? And I probably am somewhat removed from your world specifically, but I'd be curious to hear where you've been stopped, like where you're seeing that there's not interest, or there's not enough adoption, or not enough participation. And it could be a
Um,
question for any of y'all.
yeah.
And I'll try to answer your question, but it occurred to me that I'm actually curious about your
Yeah,
experiences.
I can talk about it a little bit. I'm I honestly haven't had many conversations about sustainability with like people my age outside of this group, but I know that at
Okay.
least when we visited like the elementary school, like Srihari Elementary, the kids actually seemed to know a lot more than I did at that age, and they're very enthusiastic about it, which was something I was very excited to see. So I think at least in the area we live in, they're doing a very good job of like integrating like this kind of awareness into the curriculum. And like I think it was the science curriculum that we kind of touched base on. So that was really cool to see. And I hope that we can, cultivate maybe more or like a better awareness for these kinds of thinking.
Yeah. The question is for me is like, where is the gap? The reality is it when people are like, when your peers, when you're thinking about going to school, let's say, are they thinking about, what that school has to offer with respect to some form of sustainable interest? Are they thinking about, the act of going to school in Boston as a sustainable move? Like, are they living their life in that way? Like, what level of consciousness do you think is already there and maybe missing? I started working with a company. They're out of China. They've been in this industry for maybe 8 years or so. Um, Actually, kind of worth looking at. The name is EcoFlow. They entered the industry with portable powers. This is kind of like small, hand or you know somewhat portable battery systems. And they uh, homeowners would buy them and go camping with them. It's kind of a lifestyle, but it was their way of really testing, kind of asking that question of the global public to say, how are you interested in independent energy systems? And so they took a product approach towards answering that question. They developed products, sold products, and then kind of got feedback. And now that they're taking that feedback and entering the market, like coming back to the market with like home systems, so bigger systems, more capable, but they have all this kind of inherent understanding of what problem they're trying to solve. So I had a conversation with the founder. He's a young guy. I mean, he's in his probably early 30s. And he started his story with the simple memory of him being, I think it was somewhere south of Beijing. And in the summer, they suffered these incredible dust storms. And you could say likely driven by climate change, drying. They're close to the desert. There's, don't know all the conditions, but as a young person, he just grew up thinking like, is this how humans are supposed to live? Like you can't breathe, kind of thing. And it's pretty straightforward, pretty simple. It's like, yeah, I can see where that would set, a life in motion to say, maybe this is not the best way, for us to get along. And that was enough. Like he didn't have to say anything more. I understood, like I could feel the sand in his teeth. There was a visceral tactile understanding that world not governed by, not aiming for a sustainable future is problematic for you, the individual, your body. Like it is not an abstract thing. So I would imagine, and something I've been looking at recently is, there's any number of ways to kind of get into that. I'll use the word relation, but like you have to experience the things you're talking about. It doesn't mean you have to travel the world and do all this, but um, there's a movement in Central Texas and across. I mean, it's across the country, but it's a master gardeners. Usually, it's kind of old retirees, taking up gardening, but they really become masters of the full ecology. So they're not traveling. They're paying attention to their backyard, to their neighborhood, to the green belts in a very careful way. And it's not abstract. Like they are seeing things, they're monitoring things, they're touching things, they're enabling things in a very real way. And I would, I mean, I think that for me, that's an avenue into, a deeper way of thinking and acting, where you're not fully in control. I mean, you have to say we're part of much larger forces, much larger movements, ecologies, and you have to kind of feel it, I think. The more we talk about it, and no one believes you, like a story that you just speak, but no one listens to is not really a story. And so I think there needs to be some ways where you, your peers, yourselves, you feel like you've experienced something that is very tactile. Doesn't have to be the end all, but it makes those things relatable to other people. And I think I've seen, it's interesting, the gardening and kind of ecologies, um, people light up. I mean, they understand that, they see it. You can't, ignore plants growing. And I know that has nothing to do with solar technology on the grid, let's say, but it actually does. It's how people pay attention and, manage things and appreciate things in deep ways. And that gives you access to these kind of other levels of conversation. So Yeah, I would say, you know, seek out those activities that bring your peers, into a new form of like there's nothing abstract about it. There's nothing conceptual, there's nothing critical. Like you're not critiquing it. I'd say it's vital, it's critical for our learning, but people have to get engaged. You got to fall in the mud, fall in the water, and I don't know. There's endless ways you could do that, but I think that kind of activity is really fundamental. And I would say if people came to our business with that appreciation, they'd be valued.
Thank you so much,
All right.
Stan. I think we got a lot
Sorry,
of
I may have
amazing.
talked a little too much.
Oh no, it's okay. Honestly,
Good
I was very
question.
happy to learn about where the industry's going, your experience with it, and how we can take steps to further advocate for sustainability in our area. And I just want to thank you for coming on today and talking to us. Thank you
Yeah, you
so
bet.
much for that. We had a great time. We do plan on having more episodes with more sustainability leaders like Stan in the coming days. So look out for that. And you can find his company, Lighthouse Solar. I believe it's at Lighthouse Solar on Instagram and on LinkedIn. So if you want
Yeah.
to find out more about his company and what he's done, you can find him there.
Where would we find your podcast?
I should have said that. So it's going to be on YouTube on a YouTube channel called the Solaris Project.
Okay.
That's the name of the podcast. And then
Uh,
our organization is called Solaris ATX, and you can find us at solarisatx.org as well.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thanks. I'll look for that, and we'll look for some more of your podcasts in the future. Well, good to talk to you guys. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you so much, Ted.